It's time now for the VirginiaPreps.com podcast. Here's your host, Matthew Hatfield.
Welcome to this installment of the VirginiaPreps.com podcast as we have reached the second week of October. Glad you are tuned in. We did not have a podcast last week. Was catching up on some things, and busy work took over. So, as we said before, we try to do this every week or every other week. I'm Matthew Hatfield here with you, the publisher of VirginiaPreps.com. You can also hear me on ESPN Radio 94.1 each and every Saturday, 10 a.m. to noon on High School Sports Talk, alongside the Coach Ed Young. We usually do a High School Sports Talk Plus that we put up on the webpage every week if we can. We missed that this past week too, so we'll have to effort that. Some Saturday football games have gotten in the way of my schedule and Coach getting ready for his basketball season. And we're going to talk a little basketball for the first time on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast, so be on the, I guess you could say, lookout, or have your ears ready for that here on this installment, which I think is number 3 if I have not lost count. You can also hear me weeknights, Monday through Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m. on the 757 at 6 on ESPN Radio 94.1, which is streamed on ESPN Radio 941.com. A lot of big football matchups on the docket this week. You look at it across the state, you got Petersburg and Thomas Dale and Richmond, LC Bird at Manchester, a couple of unbeatens there. Verina, who's undefeated at Henrico, who took its only loss to Highland Springs. You got Freedom and Woodbridge. That's a rivalry game. 2 teams in Class 6 that figured to go a ways in the postseason. Down in Tidewater, a couple of games that will be setting up a huge showdown, a colossal matchup as Kings Forks at Indian River, Oscar Smith at Deep Creek. If the Braves of Indian River and the Tigers of Oscar Smith prevail, as many expect, that brings us to the ginormous showdown with Indian River at Oscar Smith next Saturday. Oh, by the way, next Friday, the 17th of October, Centerville at Westfield figures to be the game of the week in the state, and perhaps an epic battle. And some other matchups of note. Grundy at J.I. Burton is not bad with 5-1 at 4-2. Northumberland at Washington and Lee. You got Colonial Beach at Essex, some Northern Neck District battles there. We're going to try to get someone on soon about the Northern Neck District as well as some Fredericksburg teams, because Colonial Forge is coming off a great performance in its win over Massaponax, and we need to highlight them a little bit more. Speaking of the Fredericksburg teams, North Stafford's at Mountain View, a couple of teams trying to get back on the winning track of things. You got East Rockingham at Buffalo Gap. I'm keeping an eye on that, as East Rock has been a story for us. We talked with Donnie Coleman on one of the previous podcast episodes. And cannot leave out Lord Botetourt. Jamie Harless's Cavaliers going to Bluefield to take on a team in West Virginia who's mighty good before the Cavs get a rematch with Northside, unbeaten, a titan of a team in Class 3. We will begin this episode with some football, though. It's, I think, maybe the game of the week in the state this week. Sherando coming off a close loss to a team in West Virginia in Martinsburg. They try to avoid a second straight defeat, our preseason number 1 team in Class 4, and they visit the undefeated Kettle Run Cougars, and we had a chance to catch up with Charlie Porterfield, head football coach. Let's hear what he told us on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast. Back here on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast, we've got a special guest with us. It's a great time to be a Kettle Run Cougar. You see Michael Parker, the former Kettle Run football standout on NBC's The Voice. He was a key contributor as they made the state semifinals, and right now the current cast of Cougars, they are off and rolling, 7-0 on the season, coming off a big win over Fauquier. They're 7-0, and they play host to Sherando, the preseason number 1 team in the state in Class 4 here on VirginiaPreps.com. That's coming up on Friday, and we say greetings to the head football coach, Charlie Porterfield. Coach, thanks for coming on, and I tell you what, it's got to be an awesome time to be a Kettle Run Cougar, right?
Matt, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity, and you are right. It is a great time to be a Cougar for sure. We are experiencing some love kind of all over the place right now. Certainly Michael Parker is helping us. I did not get the opportunity to coach him, but certainly have had the opportunity to meet him since I took over here, and he's a top-notch kid, and we are certainly excited for his success.
And I tell you what, as he keeps advancing and winning on The Voice, you hope your football team continues to do the same thing. Right now, currently holding on to the number 1 seed in Region 4C by a sliver over Loudoun County. And, Coach, I want to start with this program's been building. You know, you get there, they're coming off a couple of 3-7 seasons. Last year in year 2, you get to 9-3. This program's been kind of building to this point. What have you seen from the offseason to now in terms of the growth and how you guys have gotten to this point where you're probably talking about championships?
Really, Matt, yeah, for the first time, this is, and I told the guys, I try to be honest with my players, and this is really the first time I've ever been a part of a team that we can honestly talk about the possibilities of, getting to that final game and contending for a state championship. Really, for us, the growth for us has been in the weight room. We've had tremendous numbers in the weight room since I took over here 3 years ago, and that's really kind of where we've attempted to build this program. Bill Wisnat is my strength coordinator. He does a fantastic job for us, not only after school but also in school with our life fitness courses. So we really try to just build it from the ground up and give the kids a good base in the weight room and understand that the stronger we are, the more powerful we are, the better we move, the better football team we are going to be. And the kids have done a good job buying into that and have been okay, working for 12 months out of the year and understanding that's what it takes. If you want to win championships and you want to be in that conversation, that's what it takes.
I love hearing the help with the staff there and the weight room because, with football more than any other sport out there, it's all about how much help you can get and building those kids in the off season. Before we hit on some of these key contributors for your squad offensively and defensively that I want to touch on here in the podcast, let's go into your background a little bit. As a college athlete, you were known for helping resurrect the football program there at Elon University. Got a great win this past weekend over James Madison. Talk about a little bit of your background if you can and some of the things you wanted to instill in these kids as you got to Kettle Run beyond the weight room.
Sure, man. So I've been around the game of football my entire life. I'm born and raised here in Virginia. Was born on the other side in southwest Virginia next to Tennessee and Kentucky in the last county, Lee County. I played my high school football at Lee County, Lee High School in Lee County. After that, graduated in 2003, and I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go play at Elon University when we were first moving into the Southern Conference. So my first year there was our first year in the Southern Conference. I spent 5 years there and was lucky enough to play against some great competition. And when App State was on their rolls and winning national championships and beating Michigan, we got to play those guys that same year. And, we didn't win the game, but I don't remember that. I just remember those feelings of getting to play against those guys. And then after I worked at Elon, or played at Elon, I left for a year. I coached football at Allegheny College in Pennsylvania. Had a great boss up there, great head coach Mark Matlack, who really kind of got me into the door of coaching. I spent a year with him, and then I came back to Elon to work for Coach Limbo, who I played for as a director of football operations and then the tight end coach for 3 seasons. After that, 2011, my wife and I moved up here, and I took a job in Prince William County at Patriot High School. And again, was super fortunate to work under probably one of my best bosses ever, and Bud Bicknell, who's the head coach over there and was the head coach at Monticello. And he really taught me, showed me just how to be a head coach. I do a lot and emulate a lot of the things that we did, that he does over there. He was really a fantastic mentor for me and really kind of was the first one that get me to think that I could be a head coach. So I really owe him a lot. A lot of our success I owed up Coach Bicknell over at Patriot.
And that Pioneers team in Region 6D, always a team to watch out for. They lost to Westville a year ago, but they're a sleeper in 6D. We're talking with Coach Charlie Porterfield of the Kettle Run Cougars, unbeaten on the year here on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast as they get ready to host the Sherando Warriors, 5-1 on the year. We'll touch on that matchup here in just a bit. But moving on to your key ingredients, and I think it starts with Gabe Chumley, your quarterback. He's 6'2", $180, played some linebacker and safety last year, and his numbers this year have been nothing short of fantastic, completing 68% of his passes, over 1,250 yards, 16 touchdowns, just 3 intercepts. But the thing that stood out to me in your last game, I believe, against Fauquier, 8 different receivers caught the ball in that game, so he's sharing the wealth.
Gabe is a unique individual, and from a unique family. His older brother, Kason, was our starting quarterback last year. He transitioned, is playing at Hampton and Sydney right now. Gabe played linebacker for us. Really, the thought process being he was such a good athlete, and there's such good competitors in that family. We figured he could play somewhere. We didn't want him to have to sit behind his brother for the whole year and not get any experience. So we gave him the opportunity to play defense. He ended up starting every game for us at safety and was a huge contributor to the success that we were able to have last season. The minute the season was over, he knew he was the starting quarterback. So he hit the ground running from the get-go. And from the off-season in the weight room to 7-on-7s, just taking the onus on himself to get his receivers together and throw, and not just one kid, but able to get them all together as a group. And I think a lot of that, his success in being able to distribute the ball to multiple targets is he's close with everyone. He's just got that kind of personality. He's a natural leader. He's a state caliber wrestler, just like his brother was. And I think that really gives him an edge that not a lot of other players have, unless they're wrestlers. I think having that wrestling background gives him a grit and an edge and understanding of how hard he has to work to accomplish something that really, I think, makes him a great quarterback.
We see so many multi-sport athletes. I know there was a big study or a big stat put out around draft time of the multi-sport athletes, and especially the smaller levels, those football, wrestler, dual-threat athletes. I mean, Grundy's got one and one of the top rushers in Gabe Pfizer. In terms of Gabe's next level colleges, any attention so far for him?
He's starting to get hot. I think the fact that this is his first year as a starter is things are slowing a little slow for him right now. But certainly with the numbers he's putting up and the caliber of kid that he is, the academic caliber kid he is, I think interest in him will certainly start to pick up here as his senior season continues on.
Looks to be a diamond in the rough. Let's talk about some other guys for your coach that have contributed before we move over to the defensive side of the ball. Shannon Ferguson, I see, had 105 yards, 3 touchdowns in the first half alone last week. He's become a real threat for you, catching the ball, running the ball.
So Shannon, for us, again, played for us some as a junior. Didn't get a ton of time. He was behind David Heiss, who we lost, who was actually a first-year football player for us last year, who's now playing football at Hampton and Sydney with Cason. So Shannon he had a tough junior year. He didn't get a lot of throws, didn't get a ton of targets. He was behind the kid that was a great player. I think for him it was humbling, and his off season this year was phenomenal, as good as I've ever seen a kid have, and to his confidence level. And he quoted it in the paper last week after the Fauquier win. The reporter asked him, what's the biggest difference, and he is not shy about saying it was a confidence thing for me. So he is really, between junior and senior year, almost a different person as far as his confidence level, his being comfortable with his teammates, and being a vocal leader and an emotional leader for us. So he's had a great turnaround. I've been really pleased and proud to see him. I couldn't be happier for the kid for the season that he's having. And, after having to kind of work for his first 2 here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And your defense has been playing outstanding all year. You've had multiple games where it's shutouts or single digits for your opponent. I go back to the Culpeper game, 41-0, where you had 5 takeaways. And I think defensively, you tell me if I'm wrong, it's got to start with your 3-year starter at safety, Jack Krall.
It certainly does. And he's been a kid who, like most of our defensive players, or a lot of them were starters as sophomores, so my first year in the program. And Jack certainly took his lumps as a sophomore, and he made mistakes, and we allowed him to make those mistakes. He certainly is the backbone of our defense, and for the last 3 years, he's been getting everybody aligned. He's been making sure people know what they are doing. He gets the calls, he sets the fronts, he handles the coverages, and he's really the guy in that back end that's able to make people right. He knows the defense well enough that he understands when someone's out of position, and he needs to be able to correct that. So he's really kind of the linchpin on the back end for us.
And this too, Coach, with defense, it's all hand in hand. What kind of pressure you get helps the secondary. The secondary helps the guys up front by covering well. And you got a couple of defensive ends that have stood out, right?
Certainly, and again, those are Chris Callaghan and Logan Morris are our 2 defensive ends right now. Both, again, similar to Jack, 3-year starters, have been incredible weight room kids. Again, knew that they were going to be the leaders of the defense and how important it was for us to be good up front this season. And both of them really took it on themselves to improve themselves as players. during the off season. But they are producing really well for us, able to set edges. We're able to get to the quarterback well, which again, I think anytime you can pressure a quarterback who's panicking and just throwing the ball up, it gives those DBs a little bit extra time to make the pick or get in a position to make the play. So again, like you said, Matt, it's all hand in hand.
A few more minutes here with Charlie Porterfield, the head football coach of the undefeated Kettle Run Cougars, 7-0 on the campaign here on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast as they get ready to play host to the Sherando Warriors. Coming up, 5-1 team that we'll talk about here in just a moment. But, Coach, we've hit on Krall and Morris and Callaghan and, of course, some of the offensive weaponry with Chumley and Ferguson. Is there a couple of guys or one guy you would want to kind of give some props to that's an unsung player, or even an unsung unit on this team that's been key for you getting to 7-0?
Certainly, I think there's a ton of people in mind. The two that really stand out to me, I think our kickoff team has really given us a huge opportunity this year. Andrew Piercy, who's our kicker, has done a phenomenal job. I believe he's averaging about a touchback a game. He's just a sophomore. And the guys on that unit have really taken ownership in pinning them deep, making sure we get the best field position possible for our defense. And they've really given us, again, our defense is talented, but we feel pretty good if a team has to drive the whole field on us. And then the next would be an individual, and that's Daniel Bayer. He's our center. And he, like, again, Jack Kroll is a 3-year starter for us. Threw him in as a sophomore my first year. He took his lumps. Never easy to do. He can run this offense pretty much by himself. So he's really been, again, the linchpin for our offensive line, who I think they're very talented as well. He's really the guy that holds all them together and gives us the ability to do, a lot of the things that we're able to do. Daniel gives us those abilities.
I think you're the quietest undefeated team in the state, which can be a really good thing in a sense. I look at the teams you've beaten, and people have commented, has Kettle Run gotten that signature win yet? You doubled up Millbrook, who's a quality football team, 44-22 coach. You beat a Hanley team who's no slouch at all, 28-21. But you know how it is in Class 4. People talk about Salem, the 3-time defending state champs. They talk about teams from Tidewater and Richmond, whether it's Lake Taylor or Lafayette or Dinwiddie or Louisa or Monacan. You go down a list of them. Blacksburg's been tearing it up out west. But in your region, Region 4C, Sherando is viewed as a top dog. They got to the state playoffs last year. They have a great quarterback in Hunter Ensminger. They're coming off a loss here in that barn burner of a football game with Martinsburg, a West Virginia power that's won a championship. They got some hardware in the trophy case. That was a 50-45 game. So speak on the importance of this game, one, for power ratings points because you're on the number 1 seed, and two, for even further credibility and confidence to get a win like this if you beat Sherando, what it does for your kids moving forward.
Obviously, Matt, this would be a huge win for us, and I have the utmost respect for what Coach and Sherando are doing up there. I'm very honest with my kids, and we talk about the other teams in the state and who's at the top, and Sherando is always in that conversation for us, and we know as a team that's the goal is to, I think football and high school football is like a business. If you're going to strive to be the best, sometimes it doesn't hurt to look at what they're doing right and the things that they're doing. And I think they run a top-notch program. I love what they do on both sides of the ball and in special teams. So for me, I think that's just such a quality football program that anytime you have the ability to compete and then win that game, it's a huge stepping stone for your program, just in momentum and for the confidence in the kids to believe that they can compete at that level. You talked about some of those other, the upper echelon teams, and obviously growing up in Southwest Virginia, I knew who Salem was.
Mm-hmm.
My dad is from Giles County, so obviously I know Blacksburg. And I know those are top-tier programs, and those are the type of teams that we're striving to be able to compete with here. So I think anytime you're able to beat one of them, it's just going to give you a ton of confidence moving forward. PowerPoints obviously is going to help out with them, as high as they are. They looked incredibly impressive, I thought, in the Martinsburg game, watching the film and the scouting film. What a fun game to play. Just a fun game to watch as a coach scouting. You almost catch yourself watching it as a fan. Sometimes both good football teams, and again, Matt, we're just excited about the opportunity that we can be in the conversation with these guys and have the opportunity to play and compete against them and hopefully get a win.
Well, definitely well on your way to having Kettle run into conversation among the best in the state. 7-0 start for the Cougars. They play host to Sherando coming up as the Warriors travel to Nokesville in what should be a barn burner of the game, one of the top matchups in the state this week. Coach, we wish you continued success. Thanks so much for the time today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it, and thank you again for the opportunity.
Absolutely. That is Coach Charlie Porterfield of the Kettle Run Cougars with us here on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast. So we thank Coach Charlie Porterfield of the Kettle Run Cougars as they get ready to take on the Sherando Warriors in a marquee matchup this week here on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast. That's one to keep an eye out for sure in Class 4 Region C. Kettle Run actually is not in our newest top 10 in Class 4, and that might be the most idiotic thing, if you want to call it that, I guess, that you could say for our rankings this year. We got a 7-0 team not in the top 10, but that's just how loaded, folks, Class 4 is when you look at the likes of Lake Taylor, Dinwiddie, Sherando, Lafayette, Eastern View, Blacksburg, Jefferson Forest, Louisa, Loudoun County, and GW Danville. They have a combined 2 losses, Sherando's, which came out of state, and GW Danville's, which came to Jefferson Forest in a tight one. So it's just a loaded Class 4 field, and even the outside looking in teams, EC Glass, Kings Fork, Pulaski County, Monacan, all have 1 loss on the table, and that doesn't include there in that mixture the preseason number 1 and 3-time defending state champs in Salem. Remember last year they ended the season outside of the top 10, or they might have finished at number 10. Can't recall exactly, and they went on to win their 3rd consecutive state championship. All right, well, we talked some football. Basketball season is close. It's right around the corner, and we caught up with the head hoops coach of the Landstown Eagles in Virginia Beach. He's a James Madison University alum, played college football there, and he has one of his standout basketball players. He just verbally committed there in Michael Christmas. But we're talking about Coach Dwight Robinson. He chats about Christmas, hoping to get a Christmas present come March with a state championship ring. They've been knocking on the door for many years, and Michael's one of the key players back for Coach Robinson. They have a good group, and we caught up with him about the team here on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast. Let's give it a listen right now. Here on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast, we're now joined by a special guest. It's almost time for basketball season. October, football's in the air. You got baseball postseason for the major leagues, but the hardwood will be coming up soon, and we have with us one of the top coaches in the state of Virginia. He is the head boys basketball coach at Landstown High in Virginia Beach, a playoff fixture, especially come tournament time. We're here with Dwight Robinson. Coach, how's your fall doing so far?
The fall's going well. You know, just guys are working hard right now, in the weight room, conditioning every day, working on skills. So, you know, we're excited about the season, but we know we got to put in the appropriate work in order to be good.
Very true, and your team has always been in the hunt year in and year out. So many players have come through your program. We could go through the list of them. But let's start with the guy who is the marquee player, and he made his commitment this week to play his college hoops for the JMU Dukes. We're talking about Michael Christmas. We've got a story on our front page on Virginia Preps from Shane Metland about him. Tell us about Mike and what JMU is getting in him as they beat out Old Dominion and a bunch of other suitors for his services.
6'6", wing. And Mike's able to score at all 3 levels. At this level, you know, he's a shot blocker as well. Sophomore year, he was state player of the year. We're expecting huge things from him in terms of leadership, making other guys better around him. JMU's getting a really solid basketball player that knows how to play the game. He knows how to put the ball in the basket. You know, he's not going to be a freshman that comes in and can't fit in. I mean, he's about 220. So he's got a college body already. He's pretty explosive. He rebounds the ball extremely well. And now we're really working on him handling the basketball in the open court and just becoming a better playmaker right now.
You see him as that 3-4 hybrid for them, and how's his game changed? Of course, he was with you guys as a sophomore. You mentioned State Player of the Year, goes to Huntington Prep. He comes back. We've seen some good glimpses from him in some camp settings in Summer League. How's his game kind of transformed here from when you first had him to now?
Well, he's a much better shooter. You know, he can play all the way out to 22 feet. But like I said, right now we're really working on him getting off the glass, pushing it on the break, becoming a better playmaker overall for the other guys. He'll draw so much attention that, you know, his assist total needs to go up in order to make us, you know, really good. But when we need a bucket, we know we can go to him, whether it be on the block, you know, high post, or whether he's outside the three-point line. So His game has really evolved since he came to Landstown. He was a post player when he got there. By his sophomore year, he was facing up to the basket. He was, shooting threes. He really wasn't putting it on the deck as much. But now, anything in half court he can pretty much do right now. So, his game continues to expand. He's really been working on his left hand, finishing around the cup with both hands, driving both hands, and then, just making plays off of both hands. And that's really important.
So many players have come through your program. You go back to the early years with the likes of Mike Anderson, went to VCU, and Percy Harvin, the two sports standout, went on to the NFL. Stanley Pringle, Penn State. You think of even more recently the likes of Dante Morales with Wilmington, UNC Wilmington, Julian Norfleet, Mount St. Mary's, Darius Bolstad, Radford. I could go on and on. But I know you don't care where your kids go to school as long as they get the education and play. On a personal level, though, you're a JMU alum. First guy, I think, playing basketball for JMU with Christmas, is it not?
Yeah, it is. And, during the process of Mike choosing the school, I told him I'm going to be as unbiased as I can be. And because this is his life, this is his choice. And I didn't want to influence him because I was an alum. And that's the same thing I told every coach that was recruiting him, that, yes, JMU's in the picture, but, whether they're in the picture or not, we're looking at what's best for Mike. And that's how, I think it should be all the time. I didn't want, because I was an alum, to influence anything about, his decision. And so that's really what it was. Mike was his own man. He chose JMU after having a plethora of schools entertain him and get to know him and build a relationship with him. It's solely on how JMU recruited him, what they see, him being for them, and how he can help the program grow at JMU. So, am I excited? Yeah, he's a Duke, but I would have been excited had he chosen ODU today. I'm happy that he's happy, and that's the most important thing for me.
We're chatting with Landstown head basketball coach Dwight Robinson. His Eagles figured to be one of the top teams in the state this year in Class 6 on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast. Michael Christmas, his standout, headed to James Madison University to play his college basketball after his upcoming senior campaign. And I believe the Eagles open up their Beach District play for all you Hoops fans on Tuesday, November 27th at Princess Anne. Let's talk about some other key pieces on this team, Coach, because and also flashback to last year, how you finished the year. You had some challenging matchups on your schedule out of district, including the teams in the Beach that had success in the postseason. But you get Christmas back midseason. You show some signs, red hot going to the playoffs. You lose a first-round playoff game to Kettle, but you bring back a lot of ingredients from that team. And even though it's different than football in terms of the comparison, I've seen a laser-like focus from your team that you would see out of one of those playoff teams in football that get beat in the postseason. You've had all these guys from the summer to now back, and you haven't lost many games. You've been very competitive, and you've seen a lot of good glimpses, have you not?
Yeah, we bring back a lot of experience, and, there's no substitute for experience. But these guys, the biggest thing is that makes you excited is that the way that they come to work every day. When we are in air conditioning sessions, weight room, if we're doing skill work, these guys are focused. These guys, you don't have to remind these guys to be places. These guys are on time. These guys are worrying you to get into the gym even more. And then we got a plethora of young guys that really can play. They're long, they're athletic, and they're the guys, everybody's going to know the five, seniors that played a lot last year. But the guys that really make your team become a really good team are the younger guys. And we have some really good young guys. But, as far as our older guys are going, concerning C.J. Jones, I think he shot like 45% from the arc last year, made 47 threes or something like that. D.D. Mobley, point guard. I think he's one of the best around here defensively and being a playmaker. He has great court vision. Chase Turner, he's an athlete. He's coming into his own this year. He had a great summer. And then Lamont Oliphant, he was all region last year. So we're not lacking in terms of experience. And all those guys started last year except for Chase. Chase, the only guy returning that did not start last year at some point in time during the year. So we do feel good about these guys that are returning, but we're really excited about, DJ. We're excited about Corey. We're excited about Josh. We're excited about Sefa. And then we do have a senior named Nate as well that he's really gotten better as the summer has gone. So we're going to be a really deep team. We're going to be long and athletic. And so, we think that the year is going to be a good year. As long as we continue to work and we stay focused, we're excited about it.
And one of the things I noticed, even chatting with one of your former players and coaches there, and Ryan Goings from the summertime, and you mentioned those main cast of characters with Christmas and Chase Turner, Christian Jones, Deontay Mobley, Lamont Oliphant, Corey Martin, Josh Petitma, and so on and so forth, is that this looks to be one of your biggest teams in terms of size along the front line, and even your guards are pretty big too.
Yeah, Didi's the only guy under 6'1". And Didi's about 5'8", but everybody else is 6'1" or better. So we range from 6'1" to 6'6", and we're extremely long, quick, athletic. We got a lot of guys that can shoot the ball. And then we have guys that are like really, really good playmakers. Didi, Lamont, Mike in particular. The other guys that can shoot it, they drive it hard as well. But the three that I just mentioned, they're veteran guys that really are big-time playmakers for us, and we're excited about that too.
Does having Christmas have his decision out of the way give this, I don't know if I'd say team peace of mind, but a little bit of we're at rest with it in the sense of, okay, he doesn't have to worry about where he's going to school. He knows where it's set, and now the focus is state championship because he and a couple of these guys that were on that team a couple of years ago got close to tasting it. He got to the state playoffs, won a region title. Does that kind of put that sort of to a side now, and now the focus is now lasered on that one goal of being a championship team?
Well, I think Chase said it tonight. I think he responded to Mike's announcement, and I think he said, now it's down to business, finishing our senior business. And so those guys have been having that focus ever since they lost last year against Kettle. That's what they've talked about. That's what, they've been playing together. That group has been playing together, whether it be AAU or whatever, since they were like in 5th or 6th grade, like all of them. That starting, them seniors. They've been playing together since they were like in 5th or 6th grade. And, they're really excited about the potential of what they can do. And so, it's something to look forward to, but we understand that we have to put in the work. And so Mike, it's probably some relief off of him right now. So that all he has to do is focus on, trying to win a state title right now.
Chatting with Dwight Robinson, head basketball coach of the Landstown Eagles. They open up the season in district play on Tuesday, November 27th at Princess Inn here on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast. Mike Christmas leading the way for them. The James Madison commit and some other key experience parts back for the 2018-19 Eagles. And, Coach, I'll get you out on this one, and I thank you so much for your time here on the podcast. As you look at the landscape of basketball in your region, your area, I should say, here in Hampton Roads and the Beach District, and then beyond that on the state level for Class 6, we've seen your team right there in the hunt at the very end with some teams that have won the title with Colonial Forge and W.T. Woodson and Westfield. And then we look at the Beach this past year with the surprising success of a Cox and a Salem winning a region title. We know about Green Run and Kellum being some good rivalry matchups for you along with Tallwood. How do you size things up, and what's it going to take for you guys to be that top team at the end?
I think just knowing what our plan is and trying to execute the plan. We have a very competitive region. The Beach District is still highly competitive. Kellum's good every year. Cox has really been coming on the last few years, and last year breaking into the states, and they got almost everybody back. But Western Branch and Oscar Smith and those guys, they're 6, and then Granby's restocking. They're reloading. With guys over there. So 6 is going to be tough. Tallwood, you never count them out. They're competitive every single year, and you don't even want to name them all because you might miss somebody. But just the area in general. I mean, Green Run, Maury, Lake Taylor, Norcom. It's just Norview. And when you start naming the schools, you start missing people. And Hampton over in the peninsula. So there's so many good teams in our area that we're going to be battle tested. And, I tell everybody I'm not really that concerned early. After Christmas, you'll find out, who's starting to separate themselves. There might be some upsets here or there early in the year, but you really find out, who's really starting to progress as a team after Christmas. And, that's when teams start to get better. Some guys start out hot, and then as teams mature throughout the year, you see they start to separate themselves and become what they're supposed to be. And so I always just tell my guys, look, it's not how you start, but we should see the progression of getting better. And then by Christmas time, we should start to be moving in the right direction. And so I'm going to stick by that. And we just need to, keep a level head, keep grinding at being ready to do what we're planning to do and take one game at a time, one step at a time. It's old cliche, but you can't win 22 before you win one. So we're just going to follow that same method that we've always and formula that we've had all the time.
Eagles definitely have their sights on getting better day by day, game by game, and get that big one come March, which would be a state championship. Coach, thanks so much. We look forward to following the journey, and we'll talk soon.
All right, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That is Landstown head basketball coach Dwight Robinson with us here on the VirginiaPreps.com podcast. So we thank Coach Dwight Robinson of the Landstown Eagles for chatting with us about his team. Boy, they've got a good squad with Michael Christmas and others, including Christian Jones, as you heard, Lamont Oliphant, Deontay Mobley, Josh Petitma. It's a nice group, and others there for Landstown, which figures to be one of the favorites in Class 6 this year. Some good teams across the landscape. You think across the state with W.T. Woodson, who won a title a couple years ago. South County's a defending champ. Mike Robinson's team loses Quentin Malloy-Brown to Rice. However, they're not going to rebuild. They'll reload. That Northern Virginia area is tough. And I wouldn't rule out a James River in the Richmond area. Andrew Blazar's team made a run. And then here in Tidewater, you look at the likes of Landstown. Cox with their guards returning, the trio of Tavion Robinson, Jordan Lewis, and Kevon James. Western Branch, Paul Hall's Bruins have been in the state tournament Final Four each of the past 2 years. They lose the front line, have a very good point guard back in Kendall Bynum and DeMarcus Shepard on the wing. Woodside, Granby, just a host of teams in the Tidewater region in Class 6, which will still be stronger than it's been in a while, and could argue that it's as good, if not better, than Class 5, which I don't know if that's been the case in recent years. So good to catch up with Coach Robinson, and congrats to Mike Christmas on his college choice. He's going to JMU, and it's just another player in the long list of 2019, class of 2019 seniors, rising seniors that have made their college calls. We told you about Radford's duo of Quentin Morton Robertson, the point guard, and Miles Jones going to Radford University to play for Miles' dad, Mike Jones, there, and the Highlanders going from the Bobcats to the Highlanders, both named Radford. Christmas will team up with Julian Wooden out of Northside, a forward there. Christmas will play more of a 4-3-4 role, and Wooden more of a three-man there for JMU, you figure, when they both get to Harrisonburg. Others that have made their college calls so far, you look at the likes of some private school kids. DeJour Rucker from Cape Henry headed to Marshall. Robbie Baran from Collegiate. Boy, did he sprout up, both in size, stature, and just his abilities. Really blossomed there at Collegiate. He's going to Northwestern in the Big Ten to play his college hoops. And then one of the rivals' 250 talents, and Anthony Harris, the guard from Paul VI Catholic, also with that famed team takeover travel team. He's headed to Virginia Tech to play for the Hokies. And, oh, by the way, we had Antoine Epps on the 7.57 at 6, the Granby guard, coming back to Granby from Bishop Sullivan. He's committed to Hampton University to play his college basketball. Still some seniors out there, but this is a year where I think in 2018-19, that season, you're looking at that those Division I kids can really catapult their teams into the championship conversation. There's not a lot of loaded big men and studs, if you will, the 4- and 5-star guys. The 2020 class is the deeper, more talent-rich class when you think of Mark Williams from Norfolk Academy and Jeremy Roach from Paul VI and Henry Coleman, Cam Thomas and others, Coleman from Trinity Episcopal, Thomas, formerly of Oscar Smith, now at Oak Hill. So it'll be very fascinating to watch how it unfolds, where there's not a lot of dominant favorites, if you will, and marquee names. Well, that will do it for the VirginiaPreps.com podcast, episode number 3, if you will. We thank our guest again, Dwight Robinson of the Landstown Eagles basketball program, Charlie Porterfield from Kettle Run Football, and we'll do it again next time. I'm Matthew Hatfield. Thanks for tuning in to the VirginiaPreps.com podcast.